Get some more on the polling. It's the final fortnight, a crucial couple of weeks, and with me is the Director of YouGov, Public Data, Paul Smith. Paul, great to see you. Your YouGov poll, similar to the news poll, actually quite similar in the sense that the trend has shifted over the last couple of weeks. Talk us through the numbers you found over the weekend.
Well, starting from where we were in February, Peter Dutton was in the box seat to win. We did a massive poll. He had almost the right amount of seats to form government, and he had a pathway to victory through outer metropolitan Sydney and Melbourne, where he led. Now we're in a situation which is the complete opposite. We're finding he's behind in outer metropolitan Sydney and Melbourne. The seats he was going to win in the Hunter Valley, he's now gone back to Labor. The whole situation is completely flipped, and it looks like Labor is in front, and more importantly, Peter Dutton's fallen way behind Anthony Albanese as preferred Prime Minister, and specifically the biggest change has been amongst men who now favour Anthony Albanese by +9, when he was -6 before. That's a 15-point change. And the outer suburbs, outer metropolitan Sydney and Melbourne, 13-point lead for Anthony Albanese, preferred Prime Minister, and this is driving the change you're seeing in the primary vote, but also it'll affect the preference flow, because even if 1/3 of Australians are not voting for either of the major parties, they've got to decide to put one of them last. And the preference for Prime Minister is a big indicator about who they'll put last.
We saw at the weekend some other data from Redbridge, quite similar to yours in those battleground seats. A continued drift away from the coalition. So it's not just the overall primary, it's in the outer suburban seats where you've picked up
these are the
that
seats
turnaround.
These seats will decide the election, and the coalition was significantly in front, in position to form government possibly in February, and now they've dropped completely behind in those seats.
So what's gone on there? Why did we see that shift at that moment? Is it when people started to switch on?
Yes. What happened was that the moment people started to switch on, literally at the end of February, was also when Peter Dutton and the coalition came out with their work from home policy and cutting back works to the public service. This was received very badly, particularly the work from home. It ate into people's personal lives, and they got concerned and worried about it. And they said, this sounds a bit of a risk and a bit of a concern. And then, even if they pulled back on it, which they did, they were concerned about other things. They were going, what, do these guys look ready? Do they look... And the idea that they are a risk and Peter Dutton is a risk has formed in the public mind, which wasn't there before. So
in that risk question, I'm intrigued as to what your read is on the Trump impact then. Does one feed into the other?
They have, because firstly, those two policies were seen as Trump-style policies. Trump was seen as a major risk to world finances, to trade, to all things that relate to Australia. And people feel they can't afford a risk in uncertain times. And Peter Dutton suddenly appearing as a risk in their eyes has forced this dramatic change. And it's driven it. And the Trump thing has created a real headwind for that, if you like, that has amplified something which would have been perhaps a smaller change in other circumstances.
Well, a couple of months ago, as you said, Peter Dutton, and your large poll was suggested he was in the box seat to get the most number of lower house seats. Where would you say things are at now? Is Labor minority where we're heading, or majority? What's your read?
Well, even 3 weeks ago, we said Labor has moved back to a position where the most likely number is just short of the majority, and I would say things have got worse for the coalition and better for Labor since then. Now, the whole thing about elections, particularly 1/3 of not voting for any party, is what happens in each seat, and that's why we're going to go big model about each seat. But I would say Labor's now in a much stronger position to get a majority, when back in February we said they had a 1% chance of doing that. That's the dramatic change you're looking at, from 1% to quite possibly they'll get a majority in their own right.
YouGov Director of Public Data, Paul Smith, thank you for your time. We'll talk to you soon.